right now. So, great. This is looking good. Our stream's live on my side. Feel free to tune in, and I'm going to give the official welcome to everybody who's been patiently waiting in chat at the moment. So, welcome to our stream. We're about 25 minutes over time, but we've had some pretty awkward workarounds. I will apologize first off. You see the OBS stream flickering and showing some strange windows. That's on me. We're having trouble getting Skype configured, but we are live. So thank you everyone for joining us. We have a very, very special guest. Let me flip over. There we go. That should work completely fine. Hello to Patricia Gonsalves from Vancouver. Patricia, this is a very special privilege to have you on board. And the events leading up to this have been particularly interesting. So say hello to Patricia.
Hello, everybody.
All right. So I guess we'll start off with the reason why you're here. So a few weeks ago, you had an incident at your archery school, and I suppose I'll bring up the archery, the Lykopis page right now. So tell us about Lykopis and your story and how it all began.
Okay, so archery began for me at a very young age. I was probably around 8 or 9. And I spent some of my childhood living on boats with my father and my siblings. And this was the 80s, so there was no television. So I got books, and one of the books he gave me was Robin Hood. And it really struck a chord with me, not just, I guess, the archery, definitely, because the weapon is honorable, and that the Howard Pyle version is very much about honor and chivalry and doing the right thing. And I think as I got older, it just more of the historical aspect of Robin Hood interested me, and the historical aspect of archery really started to interest me. So I started Lykopis in about 2009, just before the Winter Olympics here. I'm a retired chef, so I spent many years of my life working in kitchens. And then I had a vehicular collision, so I needed to do something else. And my friends were really encouraging for me to start an archery school. So that's pretty much what I did. I started an archery school.
All right, and what kind of activities happen at Lykopis? I mean, I've noticed on the website you do quite a lot of things at Lykopis. What sort of things do you do?
With Lykopis, we try to encompass as much of the archery world as possible. So I was just in a small town called Zug in Switzerland this year with Jürgen Jungmann and his wife Maren, and they are paleoarchaeologists. And I remade the Holmegard bow with Jürgen, which is the oldest bow in the world, housed in the the National Museum in Copenhagen in Denmark. So we try to teach as much about archery from the very beginning, kind of up to we use modern bows for our beginner students. And when I say everything, I mean everything. So if we were to take Paleolithic or the Lithic archery as an example, you make the bows that are included within that discipline, as well as learning to nap, arrowheads, making quivers, something similar to Etsy, how to render pine sap into glue with charcoal, etc., etc. We try to encompass as much of the archery world as possible, beyond just shooting arrows.
That's amazing. As someone who just shoots arrows, this is great to hear about someone who goes through the entire process from start to finish. That's amazing. And of course, Opus has been a huge part of the community. How popular is the school, and what do people think about Opus?
Our classes are full. We ran a very successful kids camp over summer for Viking camp, and that was fantastic for the kids and as well as for my staff. And we are currently running classes 4 days a week, and we usually in autumn is when we start our open range up again. We start things off with a charity shoot for Halloween, and at this point I'm pretty confident we could probably start another adult class on Friday or Tuesday and fill it up. We run an introduction to archery class, which is a prerequisite for ongoing classes. And it's sort of, it's 2 hours and a bit to show potential students what they're going to learn here, and that we're not like any other archery school locally or even federally or even internationally. So to make sure that we're a good fit, and those sell out like, yeah, the next one is sold out, and the one after that is sold out, and I think the third one after that is almost full. So it's popular.
We can see that too. That's amazing. I see some of the images on your website. You've got archery tag. I guess you're playing that around. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. So
So we
now
have archery right here, like right in here in the range behind us. We have we take some of the buds and we set it up so it's kind of post-apocalyptic and red lights, black lights, and we fill the whole thing up with smoke. And yeah, it's fun.
and that's the actual school behind you, right? That's the range you use.
Yeah, this is the school. This is, we have about, it's close to, right now it's at 50 feet. We can go back about another 3 to 4 meters as well.
That is awesome. Okay, now we're going to bring up the Gofundme page right now, and I suppose this now's the best time to talk about what happened a few weeks ago. Do you want to take over?
Yeah, we have been in this space for, I think we're coming on 5 years in October. But we used to share it with another martial arts school, Olympic fencing, and then they left in January after 10 years. So we took over and we did some renos, but we never had to get insurance specifically because we were sharing the space, and we had insurance covering our instructors and our students from the British Columbia Archery Association. But when we got our own space and we started to look into insurance, it proved to be a little bit more difficult than even I anticipated, and my father sold insurance for years, so I'm pretty familiar with insurance. But because we cover so many different aspects, it was very difficult to find an insurance company that would be willing to cover all of it. Some were willing to cover some, and then others were willing to not cover something else. So we were muddling through, and we were actually making some really good progress in getting full insurance for the space to cover everything from the prop building for film to our retail to our student bows, et cetera, et cetera. So it just came, the robbery just came at a wrong time. Everything is going in at the end of this month. So we have, every let's just say like insurance and everything was supposed to be happening at the end of this month. It just happened a couple of weeks too early.
Yeah, that's harsh. I mean, we've had issues with our club too, getting insurance. Really hard to cover everything. We have the things covered by our national association, but the stuff in the club hard to cover sometimes. And in our case, we got broken into on Christmas Eve in a reverse Santa Claus sort of thing happening there. It was actually a mixed blessing. We cleaned out most of our old gear, but that was a good thing. But in your case, yeah, you lost a lot of stuff. I'm looking through your inventory right now. Like, what things were taken?
They got all of our retail stuff. They took most of our retail stuff. So there was some antique bows there. There was some, sorry about that. There was some personal bows. We had some bows on consignment, as well as some new bows that we, some stock that we had for sale. A lot of Asiatic composites. So, and as well as all of our school bows and quite a few personal bows, including one bow that out of all the bows that I would like to get back, I would really like to get that one back. It's named after my father, and I bought it the same year he passed away. And it's made out of a piece of elm driftwood, so it's got a near and dear place in my heart. I'd really like to get that back. But yeah, and they took a bow quiver. They took a couple of, they got my Grozer horn bow. Yeah, they got a lot of stuff. They didn't take any of the electronics, so they didn't take the television or any of that kind of stuff. The police, the Vancouver Police Department, and most of us agree that they had cased the place before they came in, so they knew what they were grabbing. They were in and out.
Yep. Okay, and of course you guys have started the fundraiser on GoFundMe. I've got it on the screen at the moment. How's that coming along?
I was that was started by one of our students, Jada Gibbs, and I woke up Sunday morning. It happened Saturday night, Sunday, and I woke up Sunday morning to my incredible business manager, Taylor Mcmahon, giving me a call, and I just kind of felt it, David, like we've been robbed. So as soon as I answered the phone, she's like, "We've been robbed." And I thought, "Oh no, we're gonna have to cancel classes. We're gonna have to cancel the kids' camp. This is terrible." And I got down here, and by the time I got here, it's about an hour and a half between when Taylor called me and when I landed at Lykopis. We'd already had former instructors, former students showing up with their bows, with their arrows. So we didn't have to cancel class. And my youth instructor extraordinaire came, Owen, he came flying down here. He brought his bow, and he made sure that he was here to cover the classes while we dealt with everything, everything else that had been going on in the Vancouver Police. And we were still able to hold adult class because people just showed up with their equipment. And then Jada launched the GoFundMe, and I am like very, very overwhelmed with the response that we've gotten. And I'm not surprised at the international response, but it warms my heart. Like I can't, it's such a tight knit community all globally, so I can't. I'm gonna start crying and to make my makeup run. So it's it was pretty amazing. It still is amazing. I'm still every once in a while I still have to be like, holy cow! And your donation just complete. I woke up to that, and I've been sleeping here at the school until we get the security up and running. So that's what I woke up to. And that was great. Got a woohoo, and I did a couple of shots in your name, so that was
That's awesome. And of course, all the best to that. I've left the link and the page on the screen, so we're nearly at that goal.
Thank you, everyone who's made a donation or has reached out to us or reached out to me personally with words of encouragement. Like Opus and myself really, really appreciate it.
Okay, and like we said, those who want to donate, the link is in the description. We're nearly at the 5,000 goal, and plus anything extra will help a lot to bringing Lykopis back on its track. So definitely encourage everyone watching either live or watching this afterwards to even spare a few, $10, $20. Everything helps, and more importantly, it shows how much that as a community that we care about each other in the archery world. So that's on the screen right now, and again, we'll look back at it in a few minutes. We'll see how we go. So we'll flip back to our main feature, which is Patricia herself. So we mentioned before, Patricia, that you've been doing archery for a long time, like 30 plus years. You've been involved a lot in the film industry, and particularly the current craze, which is the TV series of Arrow. Now, I have to confess, I know those who are watching, I'm kind of dressed up in this really cheap Chinese knockoff costume, but I actually don't watch Arrow. I've never seen it. I've seen like a couple of trailers, and I'm a teacher, right? So all the kids saying, "Oh, sir, do you do Arrow?" Like, oh, no. So I feel embarrassed about not knowing much about the show, but I guess coming from like you are the Arrow tech, the bow tech at Arrow, so you're the best person to answer questions. And I suppose everyone in chat right now who is following along, feel free to add questions as we go along. Again, I do apologize for the stream flicking back and forth between chat screens and kind of doing a workaround at the moment. But I suppose we'll do some general stuff with Patricia. So, how did you get involved in the film industry? Not just Arrow, but in general. What was your first step in getting involved in being a consultant?
I was originally the first time. So after the collision, it left me with nerve damage in my neck. So I am legally handicapped somewhat in my right arm. So I did suffer obviously from some depression about what to do. And my friends really encouraged me archery. So I worked with another local martial arts school to develop the archery program. And some folks came in looking for some film archery advice. And that was a show on Nickelodeon called Level Up. So I did that. And that was my first on-screen or screen foray or film foray. And then a little bit went by, and I was still doing the archery program, and there was 10 of them fellas gave a call and wanted the sort of full archery deal. So I brought all of the bows I had. I'd done 2 trips to Europe at this point to study the Asiatic composite and the thumb draw. So I brought everything I had, and I gave them a great big lesson, and I went away for the weekend, and I came back, and it turns out that the majority of those folks were from what would go on to become the stunt team on the first I think 4 seasons of Arrow. So I had no idea what they were there for. They just asked a bunch of questions, and we did a bunch of archery. And I went and met the David Nutter, the director, who you might know better as the guy who directed the Red Wedding episode of Game of
Oh
Thrones.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So yeah, we did the pilot, and then we wrapped up the pilot. That was a month of filming, and I went to Hawaii for a wedding, and I came back, and the show had been picked up. We went to the viewing, and Arrow viewed the pilot was the best response to any pilot the CW had. Unfortunately, we were eclipsed by Flash later on, but yeah, it just started from there. I started building the props and helping out here and there with archery. So doing the training for both the actors and the stunts. And I spent a couple of months, I think, with Stephen Amell in a very cold warehouse, starting him out with the basics and then getting to running and moving and jumping and doing parkour with the bow. So it's been a learning experience for me as well. So I've learned a lot. I've gone from Arrow, which is a science fiction comic book kind of show, to doing some in front of the screen documentary stuff, and it's been a fun ride, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mark. It's always fascinating for us armchair experts to be sitting behind the screen and going, oh yeah, that's realistic, that's not realistic, but we really don't understand the everything goes into like getting our actors and the set prepared for filming. So I guess looking at your actual job, so apart from training the actors, what else do you do as the archery technician on these shows?
Well, I'm on set whenever we're doing archery on set. So whenever the bow is being shot, I'm there to make sure the safety is applied. The archery safety protocol for Warner Brothers is applied, and just to little self-confidence to some of the folks to get them looking I almost swore, kick butt at their archery scenes, making them look, I'm going to say it, making them look badass. And some of the other stuff I do, I used to do all the arrows, make all the arrows and stuff for the show, help choose which, or present different options for fletch and stuff. I think one of my favorite fletch designs that we did here with Lykopis for Arrow was, I think it was 2 seasons ago, the crossover, the Crisis on Earth X, the bad archers arrows with the red nocks, and I really like those.
Now we have a question for chat right now from Archery Encounters LLC, and the question is, what was it? What is the hardest part of transitioning from real archery to Hollywood archery?
Dry firing.
Ouch! Yeah.
Yeah. So Madison McLaughlin was one of the young ladies that was on Arrow season 5, and she played Artemis. She studied with Jim McQuarrie from Pasadena Roving Archers in California. Jim is an awesome fella, and she had done real archery. So when I got her and I was trying to get her to dry fire, she wouldn't. She's gonna kill me. She wouldn't let go of the string. She was just like, So in the end, we ended up playing "Let It Go" from Frozen, just so she would just let the string go without completely freaking out. So actually, I find that if they've had archery training before, it is more difficult than if they have no archery training.
That's I would certainly be terrified of dry firing. And is it true, by the way, that like you basically dry fire the bows? Because these are real bows you're using, aren't they?
They are real bows. Yep, they're real bows. When we had the Oneida Kestrel, I had modified it so it could dry fire. I mean, that said, I don't need to tell the archery world dry firing is bad. Don't do that. Don't do that. But we do what we can with the bows. A lot of the strings they're not regular strings. They have I can't give away any secrets, but we do what we can to allow the bow to dry fire as much as possible. That said, the limbs twist, they get tossed around, they beat people up with them. So it's a part of my job is to constantly be checking and rechecking the bows all the time to make sure that the strings are on correctly, the limbs aren't twisting, or one of the limbs aren't going to fail. I got to watch every time he shoots it, what the profile looks like. I can hear generally when the string slaps or when the actor's dry fired. I can hear when a bow is a little off, something's off about it. So that's another part of my job, is just making sure that the archery equipment is up, running, functioning, and looks good.
And I suppose any real archer has a bit of a minor heart attack when we hear dry fire. Do you still get that anxiety spike when you hear that dry fire?
Me?
Yeah.
No. that I haven't had that like since probably the end of season 1. Like I actually am a bit of a jerk about it, because it took some of the guys on the stunt teams knew how much I was like, but now it's funny because we have bows here at Lykopis, or we had bows here at Lykopis that were specifically designed for use in film, to be dry fired, thrown around, and dropped and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that's some of the things the thieves got, but I used to love sort of busting in and dry firing at dry fire, watching my students be like, because that's how I looked. Now, I guess 7 years ago.
All right, we've got a question from chat again. This is from Hardy Acott. So the question is, how much Photoshop is used to correct bad form? I guess how much digital editing or post production goes into changing the stuff you do in filming to what you see on the final showing.
As far as so I can only talk for the archery part, but the arrows are all CGI. We have shot. That said, we have shot real arrows in the show before. Season 2 on Lian Yu. I believe it's Oliver and Shadow's first kiss. Stephen did shoot live arrows that day. I could be wrong. I'm sure the fans will get me on this one, but I think that's the only day we did do live arrows.
Okay, so obviously most of your shooting is done well dry firing, basically. There's no arrows being
dry firing CG, and on occasion when we need to catch an arrow, that falls to the special effects department, because shooting an arrow off an air gun is special effects, not archery.
Right, yeah. That's how. That makes a lot of sense. I've seen quite a few behind the scenes of different movies, and they really get around the fact that you can't shoot arrows at other people, sort of thing. So that's really fascinating to hear about, especially on a TV show. Now, we've talked about the equipment already. Let's going through now. As the consultant that's kind of watching everything, how much control do you have over the process? I mean, looking at, of course, the director has all the control on what happens on set, but how much input do you have on how the bows are used in each episode?
When it comes to beating people up with them, that's I am hands off there. That is up to the stunt team on Arrow. They decide. I might add a suggestion here or there. So when they come for training, I'm not here to teach them to kick or punch or do the splits or all the amazing backflips that these folks do. The stunt team on Arrow is phenomenal. I just might, So if you look at Shamuka, she posted some video that gives you kind of an idea. Same with Selena Jade. I try to work through. So if they're going to run and kick and they need to shoot, I try to get them to get the timing right. So it looks very smooth and badass rather than sort of herky-jerky and uncomfortable, like you're kicking and then you're pulling and then you're letting go. I try to do it as smooth as possible. And I, sometimes on set, I'll talk to the actors or what they're doing, or on occasion, a few of the stunt guys will ask me some stuff. But I don't have a lot of say. It's more, most of that is done here at Lykopis. When they come for training, we walk through. I try to walk them through as much as I can remember. As far as if like they want a roundhouse kick punch stab. We need to figure out when we reach for the arrow and when we shoot and when we release and when we kick and when we stab. So try to help them through with that stuff.
That's interesting because obviously this is not like real historical archery, so you kind of have to be like creative and realistic and plausible in some way, yet of course still
Yeah.
working with the narrative of the story. You mentioned training. How often do the actors come in for training? Obviously, there's initial training session, but throughout each season, do they come back to the additional training, or how does it work?
That tends to be up to the actor or the actress, or the performer. Steven was very intense. I got to tell you, for that first month, I learned a lot. I have learned a lot in doing this. I definitely would not do some of the things now that I did in first or second season. I've definitely expanded my knowledge here. But they come in for a couple of trainings, and after that, it's up to them. So I have had a few actors come in on their own time and their own dime to further their training. Jojo, who plays Connor Hawk, he's a fun one to train, and Kat McNamara and C, they all came in for extra training. And whenever Selena Jade is in Vancouver, I miss you, Selena. She usually pops in. She usually just pops in just to shoot. So, it's up to the performer. They do have to come for one lesson, so they have a basic grasp of it. And then it's up to them for there. But a lot of them do come back. Steven unfortunately doesn't, because the man has a family and he is a very busy individual.
Excellent. Okay, we've got a couple more questions in chat right now. One from Space Chuck, and we kind of alluded to just before. Talk about the strings, and we can't review too much about the strings, but what makes these strings safer or less damaging to the bow? Is it they're more elastic or?
No, we use basic the same string material you use on your bow. Just depending on what the bow might be doing, the loops are smaller. We usually use the Flemish twist because it is adjustable in size, or should I say adjustable in length. And a lot of the times it is twisted incredibly, a lot tighter than you would find your average Flemish twist. A lot of the time they have more strands to put up with the repeated dry firing. But that's all I can tell you now.
Yeah, and I suppose this is an obvious question, but I guess the bows you use are like wound down as low as possible. Is that right?
Yeah, and we do. A lot of people. So I've had people in the past be like, "Oh, you use really light draw weight bows because the actors can't pull the heavy draw weight." And I was like, "Well, that's sort of a yes and a no answer. When you have to shoot an arrow 30 times." Repeatedly reaching for an imaginary arrow and a string, and you got to do it fast, and you got to do it in a smoke-filled room, and you got to do it with guns firing and explosions going on around you. Nobody wants to be doing that with a 40-pounder or a 30-pounder. So we use the light draw weight to reduce the amount of damage that can happen to the bow from the dry firing. We use the light draw weight because sometimes they're shooting really, really fast while also running, while also zip lining. So we and especially also if the bow drops, it doesn't if it inverts or what have you at a heavier draw weight, it would become exponentially more dangerous. So.
All right, and we have a second question coming from again Archery Encounters. What is your pet peeve with Hollywood archery?
What is my pet Tim? What is my pet peeve with archery? Where, on film, in real life?
I'm guessing in Hollywood archery, so in film, I guess.
I leave it to Tim to ask me the tough question. I think that I learned a lot from, like I said, from first season. But one of the things that I took into account when I was training Steven was Legolas and Hawkeye. Bless your heart, Orlando Bloom and Jeremy Renner. Orlando didn't go to his archery lessons. Apparently, it was something they made fun of him about on archery. And Peter Jackson found archery very boring. Now, you're an Olympic archer. It's shoot Olympic style, so it's not the most exciting thing in the world. It's just pull release. So, according to the archery urban legend, Peter Jackson asked Orlando Bloom to dress it up, and his answer was to do that. Sorry, Legolas. We call it Legolassing, where you fly your hand away, grand gesture. And then there was Jeremy Renner with his Hawkeye portrayal, and a lot of archers weren't happy with that. And when he was asked about his archery lessons, he said that he did a couple, and then he found that it wasn't relatable on screen. And he's right. It's the Olympics. You know, when we watched the Olympics this year, it was in Brazil a few years ago. It was very exciting, the camera angles and everything, but we can't do that in film. So when I trained Stephen, I realized that we needed a dynamic movement that was engaging and exciting for archery, but wasn't Legolasing or pulling your hand back. And I remember spending a long time watching archery movies and going back to Errol Flynn and Robin Hood and Douglas Fairbanks and looking at the action there. And that's where I settled, was instead of the release being the action, the knocking on being the very fast action. So I think my biggest pet peeve is that it literally takes, you know, maybe 2 or 3 days, or hiring someone like myself or someone like other archery techs out there that do film, like Wolfie in England, in Wales and stuff. It only takes a few minutes to hire us and talk to us, and in the grand scheme of a budget of a TV show or movie, we are a drop in the bucket just to make it look awesome. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence had to go and find her own archery coach because the production company didn't want to give her archery lessons for a character whose iconic weapon was a bow and arrow. So Tim already knows, but that's pretty much my pet peeve. It's a simple, you hire a specialist for a sword, so hire a specialist for bow and arrow.
Yeah, I find it interesting you mentioned the dynamic nature of film, because the same thing happens in sword fighting. Obviously, the sword fighting on stage is stage fighting. It's meant to be expressive. It's meant to show a story. It's not meant to be realistic. Not saying that realistic is boring. There are definitely exciting, realistic fight segments, but that requires years of training. I find it interesting for archery, because archery tends to be like second fiddle to the sword guys, and the hand-to-hand combat tends to be a lot more personal and intense. We get stuck with the volleys, don't we? We get stuck with the long range volley fights.
You know, that's what I love about Arrow. I don't watch the show. So I don't watch the show. I'm not 20. I'm not in my 20s. But it's mostly because I don't have a ton of time. I watch the archery part, but yeah, it's that really dynamic movement. They put all this effort into people with sticks and swords, and even do an aspect. John Wick is a good example with guns. And if you don't get the right guy or the right person to do the archery, you end up with something that looks like The Last Robin Hood, which was a good attempt at making archery look really dynamic, but it was just too far. I personally feel, and I have a lot of people contact me about that movie, it's just too far into the realm of unrealistic. So, you know, and it's not just fiction films. It happens in documentaries. Some of the best intentions, they just kind of miss out on the archery because how hard can it be? You just pull a string back and let it go.
Oh yeah, plenty of really good documentaries. Like we've seen stuff like Japanese archery or English archery, Asian core, and you get the extras in the background who are like just yanking this string back with all their fingers, and that's real archery. That's what happened in real life.
I was really disappointed. There's a book written by an academic, Adrienne Mayer, about the Amazons, or about Amazons, and the Smithsonian picked up on it, and they did a documentary, and there is one scene where they have obvious fur-covered modern recurves with the limbs on backwards.
No! No!
It was such an explosion. I follow Adrienne on Facebook, and it was such an explosion amongst the archers in the group. Just like, you couldn't have done it. You really couldn't have done anything worse at this point. And in the end, a lot of people were like, oh, just relax. This stuff kind of happens. And I'm like, but this is supposed to be a documentary, and you shouldn't have this type of stuff going on. People are watching this to learn, and you're giving them misinformation. And Adrienne stepped in, and the Smithsonian, when they released it to DVD, they pulled the scene. So, but they didn't have to do that. They could have just hired an archery historian or archery tech. So.
Yeah, I want to find
Hollywood's making a change.
Yeah, I find interesting that just ask somebody. Like, so many people watch these movies and these scenes, And like there seems to be a bit of a rumor, like us archers tend to be very pedantic about doing it right, but a lot of us care. Like we want to do correct archery, but we also want to like kind of really show our creative side as well. And I guess just asking someone for 5 minutes, like how do you actually hold this bow, before posing on a photo shoot or a camera, solves so many issues. And it'd be nice to get some more awareness that hey, a lot of us actually do this, for fun or for a living. That's a fun, interesting how many people just bypass that thing. Oh yeah, anyone can hold this bow, anyone can hold it back.
Yeah, anybody.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I mean, it's one of the examples we do use is Hunger Games, because Jennifer did a great job. I mean, she's double jointed in the elbow, so she's got the arm that arcs out the other way. And Katrina Lorig, who was her coach, is an American Olympic archer, and but Olympic archery, the way you stand and the way you draw, it doesn't make sense given that Katniss was supposed to be a flat bow hunter. So to us, people are like, no one cares, no one knows, but to us, especially like someone like myself who's an archer and a hunter, if I stepped out from behind a tree and held my arm out in Olympic style and then reached for the string and then the deer is just, it's going to be gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just again playing into the mindset of that, like there are so many different kinds of archery, of which we're blessed to experience. But a lot of people, especially watching home, think, oh, it's only one kind of archery. It's like, oh, it must be hunting style, or must be Asiatic style, must be Olympic style, that sort of thing. One of those frustrations of being an archer in the community is dealing. No. There are many kinds of archery. They all work. They're all based on context, and yeah, it's part of our role as educators is to teach people about this.
I had a unique opportunity. I've had part of being in film and the CW shows. I've worked on all the CW shows, so I've done Riverdale, Arrow, Flash, Legends. Legends is my favorite. I watch Legends. I admit it. I was speaking to a director when we did a crossover with the Flash when Flash and Arrow switch bodies, a little Freaky Friday kind of setup there. And I didn't realize that the guy I was working with, the director had directed a few episodes of the HBO series Rome. And he and I got into, I know, suddenly I was like, fanboy, totally fanning out.
Loved Rome.
Yeah, he and I talked about historical stuff. And one of the things sometimes some things have happened in the past 8 years on these shows that stick with me and keep me focused when things happen, when things like this robbery happen or people have snarky comments about stuff. He said to me, your job is very important as an archery historian, because there are directors out there like myself who want to get it right. So I really appreciate that. I've worked with some directors that couldn't care less about the archery, and I've worked with some directors who are so intent to make the archery look as best and as amazing as possible, and really put the stunt people and as well as the actors through to it. So it's up and down in the film world. That's just the way it is.
I suppose after like sledging a few shows or showing really bad archery, I guess what are your examples of like good archery in film and in TV shows?
Well, obviously I'm gonna put Arrow. Steven makes it look. They all make it look really good. They all worked really hard at making it look really good. The most Russell Crowe and Cate Blanchett's Robin Hood I really enjoyed. Russell himself did a heck of a lot of training. If I recall correctly, he was shooting around a 50 pounder. Carrie Elwes in Robin Hood Men in Tights. It's probably something like I love that. That's one of my favorite. And of course, Errol Flynn as Robin Hood. War of Arrows is by far, above and far, one of my favorites. And there's a couple of shows out of Turkey that The Magnificent Century and Ertugrul, which are two shows which have Turkish archery in them. I have an expansive library of there's one out of Poland, and it's about the hussars, and there's quite a bit of archery in it. It's really well done. It's the Mongolian mercenaries that they've hired with their bows, and they're on the horses. the Eagle Huntress covers a tiny bit of the archery. Yeah, there's so many movies out there that I think people don't know. You know, we get stuck with this sort of Western Hollywood archery movies, and sometimes things like what is that horrible one? Sorry, I shouldn't say that. The Great Wall or Bora Barrels. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but they hired a Hungarian to teach an American Ming style archery.
It's been a bit of a meme, I guess. Like we see some pretty like really stellar like archery focused characters, but like completely like out of context. I guess it's similar to how we have the Robin Hood movie with Taron Egerton. I guess when I first saw that, I thought, well, that's kind of like Batman plus Great War, and it was a very bizarre thing.
I was originally approached by that production team, so I'm kind of glad that I dodged that arrow.
Since we're geeking out, like, how would you approach something like that if you were given that opportunity?
Sorry, you have to say this. You just have to ask. Lykopis is right next door to a bowling alley, so
right.
I know you can't hear them, but I can hear the pins. So if you could just say that one again.
All right. So like, if you were to kind of like do like the whole Robin Hood thing, like, how would you approach? I mean, the idea is that you have like you're subverting historical or traditional art by introducing a foreign element. How would you have incorporated this kind of like creativity in a otherwise historical film?
As far as with the Robin Hood story, you mean?
Yeah, like that kind of not particularly that movie, but if you kind of follow the same trope as like if you were to kind of say, oh, this style's archery is bad, this alternate style is good, how much you know?
There's no bad archery. There's no bad
archery. We know that.
I think because for me, because my archery life started with Robin Hood, of course I am drawn to the story because it evolved so much. A lot of people sort of look at Robin Hood with Maid Marian and Friar Tuck, but they don't realize that, say, that romantic element and the comedic relief there was added in the Renaissance times. It has evolved so much that Robin Hood is almost indicative of a bit of a story of humankind and the socio-political aspect of where Robin Hood went. The original ballads were quite violent and pretty scary. You wouldn't want kids to read it. So I would love to take that Robin Hood back to the 10th century Robin Hood. There was no robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. There was just robbing to the rich. And I've often thought how it would be kind of interesting because that's the 900s and the Viking age or the Viking migrational age ended in 1066. Wouldn't it be hilarious if Robin was yet to rob somebody and be on the run from the sheriff and find himself on a long ship bound for Greenland somewhere, or bound even for Canada? I think something like that. We always have Robin going east to the Crusades and coming across this Asiatic composite bow. I think it'd be great for him to go the other way. I mean, the Vikings.
That's fascinating. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we all, the Vikings brought the longbow, the Norse and the Danes, and to an extent the Swedes. They brought that bow from Scandinavia into the Orkneys and the Shetlands and Ireland. I mean, the English wouldn't really have that long bow if it wasn't for the Vikings. So I think it would be kind of cool to tie those two together rather than Robin Hood always going to the Crusades. He's always going to the Crusades.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Actually, they think about the Westwood expansion, but that's the whole point. We're so used to these Hollywood tropes and these storylines that trying to explore something new would be absolutely fascinating. We have a question in chat, just a pretty interesting, deep one, I guess. This is from Yuki Kaze. So it's a very general question, but I guess you're in a good position to answer it as well. So how does one get into archery, and like how much do you have to sacrifice and dedicate to be able to do it? I guess for the extra quality is to do it proficiently or do it well? Like, what goes into, especially with your background? Like how do you start and how do you stay committed?
Uh, that's a very broad question. It's just like anything. Anything. You can put as much into it as you want, and you can put as little into it as you want. If you, obviously, the more effort and the more time you put into it, the faster you will succeed. But there's also, everybody's different, and no one is the same. We have people in here who are just naturals. They pick up the bow, and it's just super simple for them. And then we have people who take a very long time to get into the form. And shooting with Lykopis, we don't teach Kyoto because it takes a long time, but we do incorporate the Zen aspect of it. In shooting, form is important at this end. It's important at this end more than at the other end. So, if archery is something that interests you, it is such a wide topic. It's been with us since for a very long time, since we more or less stood up and wanted to hunt something without it chasing you down and killing us. So it depends what you want to get into, and how much. Do you want to compete? Do you want to hunt? Do you want to bow fish? Do you want to just shoot in your backyard? Do you want archery tag to shoot your kids in the butt? Like it just depends how much time. But like any martial art, and archery is our original martial art. Like any martial art, they say that you have to do something 3,000 times before it becomes instincts, and we say the same thing with archery. You have to do it 3,000 times. Whether you want to do that 3,000 times over a span of 3 months or a span of 30 years, that's up to you. How much effort you want to put into it.
Thank you. That's good advice. I think any archer will say the same sort of thing here, but especially like it's just great to have the right people on board to tell really share our experiences and our backgrounds. That was the question from you guys, so thank you very much. I think we've cleaned through most of our running order, actually. We've gone through it quite fluidly. We talked about our experiences as an archer, talked about your industry experience. Let's have a look here. There's a quick question from the chat as well. Space Jockey had, I think, a question we touched on briefly before. It was there ever a time when working in film where there was something that was so removed from your like ideals of an archer that you had to question the creative direction? Like, I don't know how to phrase it better, but like was there something which was kind of like set up or filmed which you just had to cringe? Like there's no way you would accept that in real life.
In my film career, or just in film on general?
I guess either or.
Well, the last Robin Hood movie was very
Right.
cool. That kind of, I think I would have rather let my staff and students take pot shots at me with archery tag arrows. That was very painful. Yeah, that made me cringe, and solely for the fact that there's a lot of craziness in archery out there. I don't need to say his name, but we all know the leaping guy.
Uh-huh.
But I know what he does is weird, but to me it's circus archery. He's very good at what he does. But and just watching his videos, people want to explore the world of archery. He brings archery. He gets people interested. What he's doing is crazy, but he gets people interested. Whereas I find that Robin Hood movie was just so far removed from any reality of archery. I'm yet to have someone come in here to Lykopis with that unrealistic expectation of archery. So I've had people, what I mean by that is I've had people come in and shoot like Legolas or shoot like Hawkeye, and they say, oh, well, this is the way he did it on TV, so this is the way it's done. And I explain that that's TV, and film and TV are not real, but that Robin Hood was very painful. I found it. I know this is going to sound weird. I'm probably going to get some sort of fallout from this one, but it was so historically inaccurate and so far removed from the Robin Hood story. I don't even think it should have had the title Robin Hood in it. It was cringeworthy. That was cringeworthy. I couldn't watch the whole thing.
All right. I think I butchered the question from Space Shark. I do apologize, by the way. I wasn't sure what I was reading there, but hopefully that was interesting nonetheless. I've got a question from Noor Archery. Which bow do you prefer? That's a good question, actually.
Prefer for what? You need to be specific. Prefer for bow fishing. Prefer for competition. Yeah, prefer for what?
Yeah,
For
I guess
teaching.
from my side, like, what is your favorite bow or your favorite kind of archery to do?
I don't really have a favorite. I love them all. Like to me, each. So at Lykopis, we separate them into what we call the four disciplines, and we use the academic titling for that. So we have the lithics, the Asiatic composite, the longbow, and the flat bow. So, depending on what I'm doing, I'm really broken up about Patrick, my flat bow being stolen, because that was one of my hunting bows, and that was near and dear to me. If I'm competing, I use Asiatic composite, especially if I'm in Turkey at the Conquest Cup, which you should come to. I think you should come to Conquest Cup, David. It is the largest international competition in the world. 500 archers, 52 countries, modern, traditional, historical, and compound. So this year, when I was in Istanbul, Opus has competed 4 times out of the 7 Conquest Cups. We had an international team twice. So this is the one that I used at Conquest Cup. It's a modern ACB with maple laminate, and yeah, I was really impressed with this bow. I could draw it my 32 inches to my ear at 50 pounds. So, and it's really cool because it does this.
Take down those.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't really. That's like asking which one's your favorite kid. I don't have a favorite. To me, they're all fascinating. Right now, 2018 and 2019, we're putting time into studying the lithic archery disciplines a lot because of the receding of the glaciers in Norway, and they're finding all kinds of archery artifacts. Actually, one of the arrows they most recently found still had the fletch attached, and I think they said it's possibly a medieval arrow. So they're finding everything from the lithics to medieval times and Viking age. So yeah, it's I don't have a favorite. They're all my favorite.
Beautiful. Now, Space Chuck has another question. This I'm not going to butcher it. So, what's the meaning of Lykopis, and why did you choose it as the name of your school?
Lykopis is an Amazon. We have a few references in pottery sherds, archaeological finds, Greek pottery sherds that have the name Lykopis written next to a figure of an Amazon. I chose the name because it means she-wolf, and I like to think that in a lot of the artwork that depict her, or in the couple of images that depict her, she's doing something sassy and kind of badass. So yeah, that's why I chose the name, because I wanted most of our staff it just has happened that most of our staff is female, and I just wanted a strong name and a strong name that had a historical tie to it, that wasn't Artemis or Diana.
Oh yeah, that's like the go-to for every single school, right? Artemis or Diana.
Yeah.
That's I like the extra level of thought there. I guess we've run dry for our running sheet there. We've got a bit of time to go through your live questions. So if you're in chat right now, people, feel free to ask any questions while we have Patricia on the line. It's been an amazing experience, of course, to share, especially Patricia's experience and her insight so far. So we'll probably give around, say, 10 or so more minutes for the live stream. So any questions, feel free to throw in chat. What kind of question is that? Any tips or food should I eat before an archery tournament?
Sorry, any food or is that
Yeah, like I guess any tips. I guess there's 2 questions in one. So, what tips do you have before an archery tournament, and what food should I eat before an archery tournament?
Well, that's actually a good question. Huh. So when we go to competition as a team, as a retired nutritional chef, I try to make sure my students or my competitors are eating well. That is one of the biggest things that international competitors face, is you're in a different country and you have a different food. You can't just run out and buy, steak and potatoes if that's what you're after. I personally, when I'm traveling for competition, I tend to stick to things like dates and nuts, cheese and lighter breads, lots of fruits, lots of veg. Get to bed on time, don't stay up too late, drinking and talking to other archery academics till the wee hours in the morning. But yeah, lots of fruit, lots of veg. I try not to eat a ton of protein the day before competition because it kind of drags me out. Maybe a couple of days before I'll have some meat, so then it kicks in about 48 hours later. And I definitely stay away from heavy carbs. So I stick to. In Turkey, they have a lot of white bread, so I generally don't. I'll eat more of the flat bread, and I'll stay away from white rice or potatoes or anything that's high carb. Although I will definitely eat a sweet potato because that's a good sugar balance, carb to sugar. So yeah, but eat your dates. People in North America don't eat dates, so eat dates and figs. Apples, cheese, celery. I'm not super fond of celery, but I'll eat it. Okay, I really hate celery.
You've heard it there, people. Eat your dates. That's our archery
dates.
lesson for today.
Dates are great.
That's awesome. So yeah, no archery, right? Yeah, eat a lot of fruits.
I eat a lot of oatmeal. That's where I get my carb from. I make sure I eat my oatmeal in the morning. Yeah.
Beautiful. Got a question from David Terry. We've already answered this question, but what first brought you to archery? I guess to 1 minute recap. Like what started you off in archery?
What started me in archery? Reading books. Robin Hood. My dad gave me Robin Hood, and I also read Black Arrow. Dad used to joke, "It's a good thing he didn't give me Three Musketeers because I'd be a sword fighter now." But yeah, it was definitely reading, and I do have to give a huge shout out to Foxy Robin Hood, because Disney's Robin Hood.
Yes.
So the theme song when the rooster's whistling. I whistle that song on set. I'll whistle it. I whistle it all the time.
That's great. Talk about like good Robin Hoods. This is Robin Hood has to be an iconic step in archery in the world. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And it just, for Robin Hood, the interesting thing about Robin Hood is that's Robin Hood is what we hear. I mean, I'm of an older generation, so now when I ask people during introduction to archery, like what brought them here, who their favorite archer is, a lot of the time, it's Legolas, it's Arrow, it's Katniss, it's Hawkeye. They don't. Some people, believe it or not, some people don't even know who Robin Hood is. So, but internationally, there are so many archery heroes. There is actually only one culture that doesn't have an archery hero in it. There's archery heroes everywhere. So, and that's unfortunately, you're in Australia. There's no archery there, no indigenous archery there. So, no hero. But all around the world, we have archery heroes, from all the way to the very, very north to when you take the Finnish Kalevala, that's the epic stories in Finland, all the way up to here in the north, in North America, in the Inuit. There's archery heroes to, Haig, the founder of Armenia, archery hero. They're everywhere. It's not just Robin Hood.
Got a question from Anya. So how far is your typical competition distance?
Shooting distance. International competition is between 60 and 80 meters.
There you go. That's easy. Is that what you do?
The Conquest Cup changes. They change it every year. How many arrows, how many ends, how the distance. But the average is between 60 and 80. Yeah, I can. We don't. Our range, of course, behind me here is not that far, but we do try to get out to spots and to be able to shoot that far. So. And of course, training for flight archery you need more like 500 meters or more.
So Space Shock is a question. So how has your nerve pain progressed since your since doing archery? Has it improved since your accident?
No, it is what it is.
Uh,
It there's I could do I don't talk about it much. It is part of who I am. Like
hmm.
I have a handicap. It is what it is. I work with it. But you know, the surgery. There's a surgery I could do, and it has a pretty good success rate. But unfortunately, the unsuccess rate would leave me possibly paralyzed from the neck down. So.
Hmm.
You know, it's not going to get any better. It is what it is, and I try to work with it and know my limitations. And you know, my fellow team members will tell you that after competition, there's a lot of times I can't tie my shoes or put my shoes on or brush my teeth or what have you. But for me to be able to compete in the wonderful sport of archery, especially going internationally to meet so many academics and people from around the world who also share this passion, which is why you should come to Istanbul. It's, you know what, it's worth not being able to tie your shoes or brush your teeth or do up your buttons
Hmm.
or what have you. It's more than worth that sacrifice.
That's amazing. Well, reckon we'll go for 5 more minutes. So any last calls for questions we'll take right now. I guess while we are just getting our last few questions, you've mentioned your team quite a bit. I like Opus. So I want to give a shout out to your team. Tell us who's on your team and how great they are and what they do.
Like Opus, we've done, as I said, we've done Conquest Cup a couple of times, or more than a couple of times, quite a few times. First up, we have Taylor Mcmahon, who you can find on our Facebook page, or our webpage. Taylor is she shoots flat bow at Conquest Cup. She was shooting an ACB. She is a left-handed shooter, which to me, if you're a left-handed shooter, you are a superhero. It is definitely one of my shortfalls. I 100% have no shame in admitting I have a very difficult time teaching lefties. Taylor is a powerhouse and a champion in our competition. She is, as I said, she's the administrator and the manager here at Lykopis. She's the one that keeps the gears turning and keeps me sane. We also had Natasha Langeman come with us for 2 years. Natasha is a local phenomenal photographer, Feline Photography. You can find her on Facebook, and she's an incredibly strong young woman. A lot of people sort of misjudge her at the beginning, which is great. But yeah, she did Conquest Cup for 2 years, and we've also been the only school that has had an international team. Last year we had Chris and Annette from the Netherlands, and I'm not going to say Chris's last name because I'm going to butcher the Dutch last name, but we had a Canadian-Dutch team, and they shot both at the puta, so that's the target. That's what it's called. It looks like a giant pear. As well as they did flight. So Annette is 21, and she was shooting, I believe, 110 pounds, and Chris is just a few years older than me, and he was shooting roughly the same. And before that, our other international team included a fellow named Stephen Fox, who wrote his master's thesis on the Ballandary bow, which is a Viking longbow in the National Museum in Dublin in Ireland. And he came and shot longbow one year.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for that. It's a fantastic team you have behind you. We suddenly have a lot of left-handers in chat saying, "Hey."
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I've tried for years. I just sometimes you just have to admit when you're out of your league and you're failing. So I leave the left-handies up to Taylor and one of my other instructors, Denise, who is also a left-handy.
No, as a coach, I agree. I look at people who shoot left-handed. I go, I can't figure what's wrong with you. Nothing seems right. It's all reversed and backwards to me, so it doesn't look right.
I just can't do it. I try to correct them, and I just end up making it confusing. So when we do an introduction to archery, all the lefties go to Taylor. And,
Oh dear. All right. Any last questions, chat? This is our last chance here. It's been a fantastic session. We've had a lot of tech problems. We've made it work. We'll give a couple more minutes. And I think we should be good there. Of course, for those who are watching who weren't here live, we'll be of course leaving this video on the channel. So if you have any follow-up questions or comments, I'm sure Patricia will be happy to have a browse through now and then to post some insights that we didn't cover before. And I guess for my part, it's been really fascinating. I've been a long time watcher of like films and movies, and before I did archery, I just used to love watching like the pew pew arrows and all the really cool action scenes. But actually, like having done archery, I've kind of given that mixed blessing where I know this doesn't work. I don't want to believe it will work, but at the same time, it's really good to see from someone who's actually working behind the scenes how it's done. Actually, a little side story. I do teach a subject at school called a history film. We look at things like behind the scenes of historical films and archery and that sort of stuff. And I've been getting a lot more like detail on how they do these scenes safely to replicate that effect, that vibe, that mood, while not of course endangering people. So I guess as viewers we have to suspend our disbelief, not get too pedantic and picky over all the small details, and really appreciate what does go into making the scenes and making the movies. And I guess Patricia, you've been really great at informing us about how it works behind the scenes from a very popular TV show which everyone's watching right now except for me apparently. Yeah, thanks a lot. I guess we start wrapping it up. So once again, people, again, if you are interested in looking at Patricia's school at Lykopis Archery in Vancouver, the website is in the description below. And of course, if you want to help out with the fundraising, there's still a bit more to go. And we'll be very happy to take your donations. Of course, any further questions, feel free to leave in the comments below. Again, Patricia, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you, despite our difficulties. Just to point out, she's been talking to like a blank screen for the past like hour or so. So we've had to work this around. You can see my feed's been a little funny, but we've made it work. We've had a great time. I'm sure the final product, once you see this, will be absolutely fantastic. Again, thanks a lot. It's been an absolute pleasure, Patricia, and I guess this is the right time to sign out. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all the support and all the love we're getting. Lykopis, I just want to say, Lykopis isn't just me. Lykopis is a team of people, from our instructors to our students to our former instructors and our former students. It was incredibly heartwarming the way everyone came forward, and all of the messages I got from the international archery family. We here at Lykopis really appreciate it, and we appreciate, David, you reaching out. I was completely blown away. I think it was a few months ago you mentioned me in a comment, and I was like, oh yeah, he knows who I am. So it's really, really good for us here in North America and in Canada to see the giant archery family that is out there. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us through the Facebook page or through our webpage. We will be reconstructing our webpage soon, so don't be alarmed if it disappears for a little bit. It'll come back bigger and better.
And of course, we've got to celebrate Lykopis coming back from the ashes, all the new stuff coming in, all the new lessons. We'll be very happy to hear that as soon as it comes in. So again, thanks a lot, Patricia, for your time. I hope everybody enjoyed our stream today, and we'll be signing off. This is Patricia and myself. See you guys, and hopefully we'll see you around next time.